Welcome to Conversations Live. For more than a decade, we've brought you the best in books, entertainment, and current events. When the movers and shakers of the world have something to say to you, they say it to us first. And now, celebrating 15 years of broadcasting, here's your host, Cyrus Webb.
And welcome back, everyone, to Conversations Live. I'm your host, Cyrus Webb. Glad you all could join us once again. Whether you're tuning in on the radio dial here in Mississippi at WYAD 94.1 FM, we welcome you. Also, those tuning in through our online affiliates around the world, we're glad to have all of you with us as well. Sarah Ruhl is joining us today to talk to us not only about the book that she's written with Matt Ritvo. It's called Letters from Max. We're going to talk to her not only about the book, but also about how this book came about, the letters, and also, of course, I think the messages for all of us when we're talking about life and friendship and all the things that really matter. And if you're just so hearing about Letters from Max, I'll let you know then of our segment how you can get your own copy of it. And Sarah, hello to you and welcome to the program.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, the pleasure's definitely all mine. You know, I think the great thing about reading this book, I mean, kind of can begin the conversation here, Sarah, is that we feel as though we get to know you, of course, get to know Max, but also, of course, the friendship that you were able to form. What was it like for you to share that friendship with the world?
Well, you know, one always feels a little exposed sharing any piece of art with the world. You know, there's the desire to share, and then there's the desire to hold something close. But I think Max as a person was such a generous, demonstrative person, and I think there's this incredible message about the way he lived his life and the way he expressed himself through his writing, and the fact that he had a genius for poetry, but also really a genius for friendship. And I think that message is so worth sharing that I'm happy, you know, and feel privileged to be able to share it with Max.
Yeah, and I think the other side of it, too, is we're able to see the empathy, but also the actual feelings. And I think whether it's little things like, you know, commending you on your work, but also, of course, the concern that you all felt for one another, that's what friendship should be like. And is that one of the things that you're hearing from people, Sarah, is that it reminds them of their own friendship that they have with their loved ones?
Yeah, and I think you're right. I think friendship is this uncelebrated thing in our culture. We talk so much about romantic love and we talk so much about family, but we don't really talk about the bonds of friendship all that much. And when I think about empathy, Max was going through this terrible time. I mean, he had Ewing sarcoma. He was 20 years old, but when the time I knew Max he was between the ages of 21 and 25 when he died. He was going through terrible pain, and yet he had time to empathize with me when, you know, my youngest daughter pulled the chair out from under me and I fell on the floor and hurt my back, you know, which is such an absurd thing to have happened. But Max was always about taking care of the people around him. And one thing that really set Max off from a lot of writers that I know is he was so gifted, but he always listened to others. He always was sharing with others and taking care of others. And I think to go through facing your mortality in the way Max did, but to maintain your equilibrium, one thing that helps is to be thinking about others all the time. And that's one thing I really learned from Max.
Yeah, and even sharing those powerful moments. And it's so interesting. One of the things that I really felt struck by in the book when I was reading it, and I think it reminded me of a movie scene almost, Sarah, and that was at Max's wedding. You know, and I think, you know, that was one of those places where, you know, there you are with your husband, and then of course, you know, Max becoming involved, and then all, you know, your friends joining. When you think about moments like that, does that kind of remind you of the importance of what really matters in life? Those little moments.
Oh, absolutely. And just to describe the moment a little bit, which I love that you picked out. So Max got married, I think, when he was 24, and funnily enough, he got married at the same spot my husband and I got married at. We all got married at this place in Los Angeles called Inn of the Seventh Ray, which is kind of it's an outdoor restaurant. It's romantic. It's beautiful. But Max, I think Max and I were dancing as I was about to leave, and then his friends started dancing too, and then my husband joined the dance until we were all sort of dancing in a circle, and then my husband and I kind of danced off into the night. And it was a incredibly meaningful event. I gave a blessing at the wedding, and one of Max's other teachers, Louise Glick, who's a poet, presided over the wedding. And my husband and I were married by our teachers too, actually, who got frocked for the day to marry us. So I think all of these values, the abiding, transformative power of teachers in our lives, and the love that spreads out from, like, the romantic love is both, it's both private, but it spreads out to others. Really beautiful, happy marriages, the love spills out into the community, and that, I think, is what I felt at that moment.
Yeah. And I will mention this. I know you're going to share something with us from the book, Sarah. But the other thing that I think is so big about this book is that it's great that you have someone who you can talk about the tough things with, right? And not feel as though you have to have, one, all the answers, but two, know that you're not alone in the questions. When you talk about life and what happens after life, and I think, that is one of the big things for a lot of people. You're very open about that. I want to actually read what you wrote, because I think it's an interesting thing. The letter is dated February the 12th, and it's interesting to hear you, even in your own wisdom, be able to acknowledge, your own limitations and thoughts sometimes. You wrote this, but I mean, truly, Max, what do I know? I am trying to be wise for you, but I, too, am behind a glass darkly. What about those two black holes colliding in space and the sound they made that scientists measured yesterday? I think, what was that like for you to kind of have someone that kind of pushed you to think about things that maybe even you had not fully come to understand?
I think Rilke said, try to love the questions themselves. And I think that's one thing that Max exemplified, was the beauty of the question, the beauty of asking the question and being able to ask the question with someone, not to be alone in asking these questions. And I mean, the phrase you pointed to, through a glass darkly, is obviously a Christian phrase. And I was raised Catholic, and Max was raised Jewish. At some point along the line, I got really interested in Buddhism, and Max was really interested in meditation. So there's sort of an ecumenical seeking and searching. And I think for a lot of us, the questions about the afterlife are fairly abstract, but for Max, it was a real thing he was contending with at a very young age. So they were pressing questions, and I felt, that it was a privilege to be able to engage those questions with him. I lost my own father to cancer when I was 20. So when I was Max's age, I was thinking a ton about all of these questions, and all the people around me in college were thinking about entirely other things, whether they would get an A, whether they would find a date, and I found that profoundly alienating. So I felt almost a moral imperative to be a listening ear for Max if he wanted to talk about death.
Right. How did that make you then have to face mortality, Sarah?
Well, I don't know. My kids laugh at me. I have 3 kids, and they read my plays, or they hear about what my plays are about, and they said, Mom, all your plays are about love and death. That's it. Write about something else. And I say, those are the great themes. I'm sorry. So I think, in some ways, maybe losing my father so early or being engaged in the arts, it's a question that preoccupies me anyway. It's not as though Max came into my life and asked me to think about death, and I'd never thought about it before. I share with him a dream that I once had about my father, who died when I was 20 of cancer, and in the dream, there were these letters in the heavens that spelled out, "There is no God." And I turned to my father in the dream and said, well, who could have written that then? And my father said, exactly. And to me, I'd been agnostic at a point in my teenage years, that dream gave me a kind of faith. I felt like my father was saying, there's so much we don't know, but who could have written those words in the heavens? That there was some consciousness, some meaning, that some way we had to create meaning. And so I shared that dream with Max as a kind of talisman that made me a little bit less afraid of death.
Right. And I think this is a book that will definitely help others as they're kind of grappling with their own questions and even the answers. I want to say for those who are just tuning in, you're listening to Conversations Live. Sarah Ruhl is our guest. She, along with Max Ritvo, has given us the book Letters from Max, a book of friendship. We're going to remind you how you can get your own copy of it. Sarah, you had something you wanted to share with us. Why don't you tell us about it?
Well, I thought it would be nice to read a poem that Max wrote. I mean, Max was really a genius poet, and he also has 2 books of poetry out that you can read. And I think of the book of letters almost as a gateway drug to Max's other poetry, because sometimes people are afraid of poetry. Maybe they took a course in college and they found it abstract or difficult. And I think when you get to know Max a little bit and know his spirit, there's such exuberance in his poetry and so much sorrow, but also so much humor. And I just thought I'd read one poem he wrote me that's not that he wrote to me, but that he sent me in our correspondence that's published in the book. It's dedicated to his wife, Victoria, and it's called Your Next Date Alone. The stage is empty. How do we fill it with music? The words will be the play, and the tune will be the body carrying the words, shaking with tears. The towel torn, so what he'd like hidden is exposed, where his flesh is like a bruised heart. Music is the wisdom of words in a body. If you wish to see me, you'll have to sing. I will soon have none of the ways earth plays along with the wind. No grass, no wind. I just think it's so beautiful.
Right. And I think, too, an understanding and I think an appreciation for others. Another thing that comes through in your letters, again, we mentioned it earlier, is that one of the things you hope people take away from this book, that even though this is, as the title alludes to, letters from Max and even letters from you, Sarah, that they realize that the connections that you all had are connections that we can choose to have if we make room for it.
Yes, absolutely. I also want to make sure you're hearing me okay because there's a little reverberation, but I'll just plow through if you can hear me okay.
Okay, sure. We were having it, and it just cleared up there a bit. Yeah.
It just cleared up, just the ether there.
Yeah.
I feel like one lesson Max taught me was the power of being demonstrative and telling people that you love them. And, I'm from the Midwest, bred from Irish Catholics, and we love our family, but we don't tell them that much, actually. And I feel like Max had this huge heart and this ability to tell his friends, to tell new friends, to tell former teachers, to tell his family that he loved them. And he meant it sincerely. And he had a sense of urgency about time where he knew it was right to say it. It was right to express himself in that way. And in doing so, I feel like he poured more love into the world and also didn't leave regrets behind in terms of how he left things with people. And I think that's one beautiful lesson from Max. And another lesson, I think, was that he passionately wrote up until the day he died, practically. Writing was his love. It's what kept him sane. It's one of the things that carried him through his illness. And when he couldn't write anymore, he told his mom, I can't write anymore. I think it's time to let go. Do you think I've fought hard enough? And she told him that she thought he always fought hard enough. And then his mother let him go, and he let go. And to me, as a writer, but for anyone who has a vocation in life that gives them inspiration, the fact that Max could hold that inspiration through a tremendous amount of pain, and that it gave him a spark up until really the last week, is incredibly inspiring.
Yeah, great inspiration for all of us, Sarah. Thank you so much for sharing that. Again, everyone, Sarah Ruhl has been our guest. The book is Letters from Max, a book of friendship, by Sarah and also Max Ritvo, as we mentioned earlier. The book's available through our friends at Amazon.com. And, Sarah, how can our audience stay connected with you?
I have a website, sarahruhlplaywright.com, and I'm on Instagram. So thank you so much for talking, and thank you, too, for just the profound and emotional way that you read the book. I really appreciate it.
Well, look, I appreciate you sharing your friendship and your words and Max's words with us. I mean, I think we're better off because of it, and I think it helps us to be able to look at others' friendship. No, I mean that. It helps us to be able to look at others' friendship and to better appreciate our own. Because it's so easy for us to take things for granted. So thank you so much for that, and I look forward to our next conversation together.
Thank you so much. Take care.
You do the same, and we thank your audience for tuning in to another great segment of Conversations Live. If you all came in late, you missed part of the conversation with Sarah. Don't worry. Thanks to our online friends, you all can catch the replay, but after we go off the air, the link is already available through our social media sites. So head over to Facebook.com/CyrusWebb or go to Twitter.com/CyrusWebb. If you click on the link there, you can listen to the show completely for free and share with your friends from there, too. Until next time, I'm your host, Cyrus Webb, saying as always, enjoy your day, enjoy your life, enjoy your world. Make sure you take out time to enjoy some good music as well as a great book. Thank you all for choosing Conversations Live. Let's make it a great one.